You ever heard the name Jennifer Schuett?
Yes.
Did you ever have occasion to come in contact with her?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
No. My whole life for the past 20 years has been utterly and completely up because of my mistake.
I can tell, obviously, this affects you a lot, but I think you would, if you were to see her, I think you would be extremely proud of her. I really do.
Oh, thank you. She's alive.
Yes, she's alive.
She's alive.
She's alive.
8-year-old Jennifer Schuett was kidnapped, assaulted, silenced, and left for dead. She was only a child at the time and lost the ability to speak after she was horribly wounded by her attacker. But she survived, remembering every detail, and went on to solve her own case, finally putting an end to Dennis Earl Bradford's reign of terror. I wanted to help because I was the only living witness. In the small town of Dickinson, Texas, a curious little girl named Jennifer lived with her single mother, Ellen, in a small apartment in a rough neighborhood. As far back as I can remember from my childhood, I didn't like the dark or sleeping alone, so I found comfort in going to bed with my mom. We were all that we had. It was just the two of us. On August 9, 1990, at 2:30 a.m., Ellen asked Jennifer to sleep in her own room because she needed to wake up early the next morning. Jennifer went to her room and read until she fell asleep. In the morning, Ellen couldn't find Jennifer, and the window of her bedroom leading out to the parking lot was wide open. Sometime early Friday morning, 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett was abducted from her bedroom. Jennifer's mother entered the room and found the window open and her daughter gone. "Jennifer, Jennifer," I called out, but there was no sign of her. She was just gone. The police arrived and immediately began their search. It quickly became evident to the officers that this was not just a runaway case. As any new developments arise, I'll be more than happy to share them with you. Later that day, at 6:30 p.m., the police received a call from parents in the area. Their children were playing in a field near town and stumbled upon something. Horrifyingly, they realized it was the body of a little girl. I remember being put into the life flight helicopter. At that point, they knew time was of the essence. They had to get her to a hospital. As she was airlifted, I remember thinking we were dealing with a murder case. Her injuries were so severe that her survival was uncertain. Jennifer's condition was critical. Her throat had been cut from ear to ear. We suspected she may have been sexually assaulted. And really, at 8 years old, you don't fully understand what rape means. She was in such a horrific state that they barred her mother from entering the room. You could see the fear in her eyes. Miraculously, her attacker had missed all the major arteries in her neck. It was big news in the small town of Dickinson, Texas. Jennifer's mother was frantic. "It's just been the two of us." We completed her surgery. Her airway was stable. When Jennifer regained consciousness after surgery, her behavior suddenly changed. I was a difficult patient because I had many male doctors, and I was scared of them. The Dickinson Police Department dispatched a whole squad to monitor her hospital room. Between this and the male doctors and staff, Jennifer ended up in a constant state of panic. Everyone was a suspect in my eyes. A strange detail at the time was her distrust of all police officers, which would make more sense once Jennifer began to share her story. With Jennifer, we had a survivor who couldn't speak. The challenge was to gather information from her. Now we're talking about an 8-year-old. Jennifer couldn't communicate directly with investigators. With no other option, they gave her a notebook and pens and asked her to respond in writing. Mostly, I wrote notes to my mother, who handed them to the officer outside. At just 8 years old, she was considered very intelligent for her age. She was incredibly detailed in her descriptions. So after falling asleep in her bedroom, she woke up in the arms of a stranger. He was running with me, carrying me down the sidewalk, and I immediately tried to scream, but he covered my nose and mouth. He whispered that he was a police officer and she needed to calm down. They got into a car and he held her on his lap as they drove away. At that point, she knew something was wrong. She knew the police were the good guys, but she had been taught never to trust a stranger. As a child, I wanted to believe him, but the part of me that was scared of the dark knew something was really wrong. This revelation helped investigators understand her distrust of males, especially police officers. I started to realize I had been kidnapped. I was very afraid of what would happen next. To calm her down, the man parked at the local elementary school. He said they would wait until the sun came up for her mom to pick her up. I remember anxiously waiting for those headlights, but they never came. The man smoked and drank, offering her candy, a big red flag for anyone familiar with stranger danger or child safety programs taught in schools at the time. He said, "Well, your mom's not coming," and started the car. They drove out of town and stopped in a field. Jennifer began asking questions. I was a very curious 8-year-old. I was interrogating him. I wanted him to prove he was a police officer. I asked, "Where's your gun? Where's your badge?" He told me his gun was in the back seat, so I stood on the front seat to look into the back. And that's when it happened. Out of respect for Jennifer and other victims, we won't detail the wow, as it's extremely graphic. When she woke up, she was dragged by her ankle, naked, through a field. It's crazy that someone so young would know exactly what to do in that situation, but I played dead, knowing it was my only chance. He dropped my legs. I heard him walk away. He left her for dead on an anthill. As the sun rose, she heard children playing and dogs barking in the field. I realized I couldn't scream. I only had enough strength to put my hand on my neck and see it covered in blood. At that point, she was drifting in and out of consciousness, but the fire ants kept biting her, waking her up. Even as death loomed, she remembered every detail, thinking that if she survived, she would catch him. I remember saying he looked greasy and might have had a scar on his face. I remember writing that there were beer cans in the car and the brand of cigarettes he smoked, every detail I thought could help find him. By asking him questions in the car, she even got him to say his name. "So," I wrote, "he said his name was Dennis." A sketch artist helped her turn her memories into something the police could use. I couldn't talk, so I described him through notes without saying a word. Jennifer helped create this, but unfortunately it didn't seem a strong case for police. They shared the sketch with the public, but it didn't lead anywhere, and the small police department found only some of Jennifer's and her attacker's clothes in the field. It was so frustrating, not being able to say what I wanted to, how I wanted to. She tried to express her anger but became more frustrated by not being able to speak her mind, and that's when a miracle happened. In one of her silent rages, a tiny sound came out. Doctors were shocked. Her vocal cords were almost cut in half and weren't expected to reconnect, but they started to heal. I even got my voice back in the hospital. I haven't stopped talking since. Shortly after being discharged from the hospital, Jennifer returned home and even went back to school the following year. But going back into the world where I was so brutally attacked, who would want to face that, she wondered. The trauma wasn't just mine alone. The whole town of Dickinson was affected because everyone was on edge. No one knew who had done this to me. The police increased their presence, stationing officers in schoolyards and even inside classrooms. As time passed, leads grew cold, resources diminished, and frustration mounted. The case went cold, and Jennifer waited for 18 years without any progress. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Detective Tim Cromie took over the case and wanted to meet with her. For the first time in years, a police officer reached out to her with hope in his voice. Sitting down with Jennifer, Detective Cromie said, "Jennifer, I promise you, I will do everything within my power until the end of my career to get the answers you need for this case." Those words transformed her outlook. It felt like he was as committed to solving my case as I was, Jennifer recalled. Her involvement in the investigation provided unique insights that were previously unknown. Determined to contribute to solving her own case as the sole living witness, Jennifer worked closely with Detective Cromie. They enlisted the FBI to analyze clothing found at the scene 18 years earlier. Working on cold cases taught them that time was their adversary. People forget, move away, or pass away. One of the advantages of time passing was the advancement in DNA technology. However, as years went by without a breakthrough, Jennifer's optimism waned. "I began to doubt if we'd ever solve this case without a DNA hit," she admitted. The process took a year but proved fruitful.
At 2:30 in the morning, Jennifer received a call from the DNA lab. The examiner informed her, "We got a hit on September 22, 2009. The FBI had a name, Dennis Earl Bradford." "Who is that? We've never seen that name in any report," Jennifer exclaimed. Tim and I connected it back to the notes Jennifer wrote as a child, where she mentioned a man named Dennis. For an 8-year-old on pain medication, unable to speak clearly, her accuracy was monumental. Dennis Earl Bradford, a 39-year-old man from Arkansas, had recently been released from prison for another kidnapping, just 6 months after Jennifer's abduction. He was later arrested for attempting to sexually assault another woman in a bar, using similar methods as he did with Jennifer. His DNA from that assault matched the evidence submitted, linking him to Jennifer's case. The police obtained a copy of Bradford's 1990 driver's license. Comparing it with Jennifer's sketch, they found an almost perfect match. Drawing that sketch based on his driver's license photo was incredibly accurate, Jennifer noted. The surreal moment of Bradford's arrest left her hopeful for a confession, ensuring justice in court. Announcing Bradford's capture, Jennifer faced the media. "I'd like to thank Detective Jim Comey of the Dickinson Police Department and Special Agent Richard Renison of the FBI for their relentless dedication over the past year and a half," she stated. "From day one, they never gave up on my case, hearing my voice and witnessing my determination." Preparing for Bradford's trial, Jennifer hoped for closure. "We aimed for August 10th, 20 years to the day of the attack, to come full circle and close this chapter," she reflected. Late nights crafting her victim impact statement spanned 19 years of emotions. However, Bradford took his own life in jail on the trial date, denying Jennifer her day in court. Visiting his grave, Jennifer read her statement aloud. "Dennis Bradford, you chose the wrong little 45-pound 8-year-old girl to try and murder. For 19 years, I thought of you every day, never giving up on finding you. Today, I know my persistence was right." Seeking closure, she was bitten by a fire ant, a poignant reminder from the field that day. Jennifer's journey had two main goals: to find her attacker so he couldn't harm others and to share her story, empowering victims of violent crime to speak out. "I proudly accomplished both," Jennifer asserted. Her determination never let her victim status define her. She pursued starting a family despite being told conception might be impossible due to her assault. "When Jonathan and I learned we were expecting, we were shocked," Jennifer recalled. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter and then a son, their happy ending. Today, Jennifer continues advocating for victims. "I am not a victim, but victorious," she declared. "Despite what they tried to paint me as, I'm just like anyone else out there,